Patch 1.4 and patch 1.5 have not dramatically changed the meta, but a few new decks have popped up into the sacred S tier space. In this video, I'll be looking at some of the top tier meta decks, explain how to use them, and the strategies you'll be utilising to climb the ranks. Kinkou Elusives is an aggressive deck that buffs elusive units to hit the nexus for easy damage. This is a quick deck that will win if played correctly in favourable matchups and still have a good chance when against a tough one. As you can see, it uses extremely cheap cards with 37 costing 4 or less mana. It's effectively a mono Iona deck that increases the proc chance of allegiance effects with Kinkou Wayfinder, the key card to this deck, but also still utilises a few Freylord buff cards. Ideally, you want to have Green Gate Duo in your hand since it's probably the best value elusive unit. However, Navori Blade Scout and Shadow Assassin are also solid options too, even if it's more advisable to draw into Navori Blade Scout or for it to be summoned from Kinkou Wayfinder while we have Green Gate Duos in play. It's worth noting that recalling a unit through Navori Conspirator is especially good in this deck since most of our units have some sort of effect on summon. Target this on cards that summon effects like Omen Hawk or Imperial Demolitionist for that last burst of damage to finish off the game. Even though Runeterra Hatchling is quite expensive, the deck is the best fit for it due to the elusive theme and having many units on the board at one time. It acts as amazing value against other aggro decks and even a solid protection against removal in control decks, whilst in both cases pushing for a lethal, powerful finish. Zed doesn't really contribute to the elusive theme, however, he is a very strong unit in his own right, and he can buff Green Gate Duo by 1 damage since he creates a living shadow every time he attacks, but in the end, he's pretty much in the deck just for curve reasons. Will of Iona is just a super flexible card. We can use it in tempo play and to recall our opponent's units. It's especially useful against control decks where if they play a big removal spell, you can basically just deny the whole turn by recalling your unit. It's also good against aggressive decks as it can give you a big advantage to finish off the game. Ezreal levels up upon targeting 8 or more enemies with spells. Twisted Fate requires you to draw more than 8 cards whilst he's on the board. The synergy between Bilgewater and Piltover and Zorn regions leads to a deck full of removal and draw spells. This is perfect for players who love to always have options in their hand and love flashy finishes. The deck consists of lots of low mana cards with a staggering 15 costing 2 mana. Cards like Static Shock and Make It Rain can target up to 5 enemies alone, enabling more than half of Ezreal's level up requirement. In addition to that, other cards in the deck, such as Yoral Grifter, can give you easy access to 0 cost Warning Shot. If you have an upgraded Ezreal on the board and a Warning Shot in the hand, it enables you to chip off an instant free damage off your enemy's nexus. Even if you don't have the warning shots, Ezreal and your other spells are still your main win condition with this deck. In terms of one-shots, Jagged Butcher is in a league of his own. If you manage to get a good plunder with warning shot on round 1 or 2, then play him. You have an extremely good value 1 mana drop with buffed up, free power and health. However, do not shy around playing him on round 1 with 2/2 base stats if you're going to take damage. Riptide Rex is the final boss in this deck. Once you've hit the opponent's nexus during a round and you have 8 mana to play Riptide Rex, don't think twice. Plunder is necessary to trigger its cannon barrage effect, and it's devastating to say the least. This deals 2 damage to any unit on enemy side of the board, and if it's dead or gone, then hits the enemy's nexus for 1 damage instead. This means you have the ability to do a total of 14 damage to your opponent's units and even take out some beefy champions. Sejuani Misfortune, Burn Aggro and Deep are all fairly good matchups for this deck. Your mulligan is always consistent against all 3 of those, as you'll want to look out for Chem Pump Pickpocket and any other 2 or 3 drops, as well as Twisted Fate. You'll always want to look towards saving a few of your removal cards to clear out your opponent's early game. Lots of these decks have a number of key cards, so identify them and play your removal spells around them where you can. Demacia Bannerman and Heimer Vi are incredibly tough matchups for this deck for their own reasons. Heimer can generate insane value and continuously deal with any threats you might have. Demacia Bannerman's deck is really strong, and their mid to late game threats are far superior with Citria the Bold. Anivia Control is a great deck for control players who like to have options to deal with aggro decks. This deck has a very big focus on playing a slow game with 10 cards costing a staggering 7 or more mana. With tons of healing options available to you, you'll always feel safe while playing the very long game. If you're playing against unit-based aggro decks, it's important to mulligan for your early units, so you have board presence to stall in conjunction with your removal spells such as Avalanche and Withering Wail. If you're against slower decks, it's less necessary for you to have early unit options, unless you can also have a Glimpse Beyond to draw cards with. The Ruination in this deck, as most of your few units don't care about being destroyed. It's the best area effect spell in the game, able to close the game right away against aggro, and gives insane value against more popular control-ish decks, such as the Harrowing for example. The main win condition of this deck is sticking multiple Anivias on the board and slowly grinding your opponent away with their effects. To achieve this, don't worry about using Anivia early game as a blocker, as when she dies, she can also be resummoned with the effect of the Rekindler. Also keep in mind that every copy of Anivia that's died will be summoned by the Harrowing, and you can deal up to 12 points of burst damage from her attack effect alone. You can also play the Harrowing on a defensive turn. Egnavia will still spawn from the ephemeral Anivias on the following turn, and you can also use these to attack them for the same result. Don't be afraid to go low on health. When your opponent doesn't have instant damage like Warning Shot or other burn spells such as Mystic Shot, don't commit your healing or removal spells. Tempt your opponent to push for lethal with their spells and use your healing cards like Withering Wail and removal spells like Vengeance in response. I won many games with this deck with less than 5 Nexus health. This deck is simple, aggressive and efficient. Darius Aggro is a great deck if you like fast games with a simple direct game plan. Play units and hit for quick and big damage. It's effectively a mono Noxus deck featuring 3 copies of the Harrowing as a finisher. The average cost in a deck is very low, with 29 out of 40 costing 3 or less. Simply mulligan for your 1 cost Legion Saboteur and Precious Pets to start the pressure straight away. Make sure you keep high value cards like Basilisk Rider and Iron Ballista in your hand, even though they're the most expensive followers. Don't keep Imperial Demolitionist unless you have Crimson Disciple already in your hand. You will want to pull off the combo involving both of these to deal the easiest 4 points you'll ever deal, but only if you have both of them in your hand to begin with. Additionally, the Harrowing is something you'll want to draw into rather than already have in your hand as an opener, as it will significantly slow down your pressure, having 1 less damage source until you have 9 mana. Don't be afraid to let your units die if you have the Harrowing in your hand, as the more units that die, the more value this spell will get and be your finisher, so block aggressively as possible, and then finish off the game with this spell. The most valuable cards to let die are Overwhelm units and Legion Saboteur for additional burst damage. The 2 champions in this deck are Draven and Darius. Draven is a solid curve filler and will fill your hand with spinning axes which complement the Overwhelm units very well. If you do this later in the game, Darius is a solid top end card that will usually help you close the game, especially as you should level up instantly, as there's a high chance your opponent will have less than 10 mana by this stage. He's also a useful champion spell card, as he has Decimate, which falls perfectly in line with the damage aggressive theme of the deck. Against control decks, save Nox in Favor and Transfusion for when they target your units with big swing cards, and then you can try and bounce back using these spells effects to protect them. This deck is pretty good matchup v Heimer Vi Control. sometimes they don't have any unit interactions for the first 3 turns. Their first round 1 interaction is probably going to be a Thermogenic Beam, and their round 2 interaction is probably going to be playing a Claw of the Dragon or even a Mystic Shot, so you can sometimes rush them down before they get off with Heimer or Vi. Heimer Vi Control is still a very solid meta deck, and the gameplay hasn't changed much since the deck first came into the meta. I've already covered this deck in a previous video, so please check out the card in the top right to see this covered in more detail if you want to learn about it. A huge shout out goes to Bomber TV for helping me put this video together. He's a Masters tier player and he just absolutely knows his stuff, so he really helped me out with the interactions for this deck and even proofread my script to make sure what I was saying was up to date to a Master tier standard. Please go and check out his channel, and it will be linked in the card that you can see on screen now, and it really has some good content, so please do look. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I got a lot of comments saying they basically want to see interactions in the card game, as well as simply having images of the cards that I'm talking about on the screen. So this is directly me listening to your feedback, and I really hope you like it. What would you like to see a video done on next? And what do you think would be the biggest buffs and nerfs in patch 1.6? I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments. See you next time, guys.